So, welcome to Crash and Chug. Thanks for coming back. For those of you folks listening, for wherever you're at, either going to your local trailhead or to work or what have you, we have Travis Smith here. He's a buddy of mine. I met him about a year ago. I should say the Travis Smith. I've raced with him before. He's also on the Crossroad Bikes race team. Shout out to Crossroad Bikes. But yeah, he's a good dude, and we had some conversations before. I thought I'd bring him on and kind of just talk about like some of the wild shit that we just talk about, and just have a good time doing it. So thanks for coming on, man. Gracing us with your presence.
Yeah, happy to do it, man.
Yeah, man. So I know a little while ago we just ate and stuff. How'd you enjoy that spaghetti, man? Was it all right?
You make a good spaghetti, Simon.
Thanks, man. You don't have to say that. You could just be like, no, that shit sucked, dude. I should have went to Olive Garden before it came.
It's pretty hard to mess up spaghetti, to be fair.
That's true. It's a true story. But yeah, man. So I know we're kind of talking about a little while ago about you doing the big mountain enduro. So you how is I mean, it's probably a dumb question, but what's the racing scene like there as opposed to here in Texas?
I mean, not to knock the Texas race scene, but it's like a whole nother level for sure.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty cool. And I don't know if the Texas Enduros have like 100 people, 150 maybe
right.
for some of the big ones. And this one, there's like some classes just to have 100 people. And so there'll be like 400 or 500 people racing.
Really?
I mean, I could be totally blowing that number, but it feels like a lot more people out there. And then like the competitiveness is just like nuts. Like in my age group in Texas, normally I'm like top 10 at least, normally top 5. And there, I think I was 16th. And this is just like amateur men. Like they're so fast. Everyone's so fast there.
So how do they do it? Because like normally like the races here. I mean, are they usually like at bike parks or are they? I'm showing my ignorance here, by the way. But.
No, you're good. I think all of them this season at least are at bike parks. And normally what they'll do to try and not give the locals a huge advantage is they'll add like new trails, kind of like what they do for some of the Texas ones, right? Where they'll have like a fresh cut trail or two. So that way it's not just all bike park trails, or there'll be like some backcountry ones at some of the Colorado venues and stuff as well. Just because if it was just like straight bike park, the park rats are just going to crush everyone.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's like a mix. You get some bike park trails and then some like fresh cut, like loamy stuff.
What's the like average? I mean, for those folks that don't know, I've only been racing a few years, and most of my races have been in Texas. And not for nothing. I mean, Texas has its challenging trails and tech. However, most of the runs aren't as long as some of the races, like such as the Big Mountain Enduro.
Yeah, so like I've only got experience at one of the Big Mountain Enduros so far. Like you said, I'm signed up for like the whole season this year, so if you had me on in like 3 months or 4 months, I'll have a much better idea of all of them. But I think the one I did is like the shortest one, and it's really not that much longer than some of the Texas ones. Like I think for comparison, most of the Texas Enduros, we've got like 300 feet of descending on one run or so. And this one, I think is like 500 or 600. But Ironton, Missouri is like super gnarly, like I was telling you before. So like you get to the bottom, and like what we would call a rock garden, they would just call like flow there. So like it's so chunky. So you get to the bottom and like you barely can hold on to the handlebars anymore. So even though the runs aren't a whole lot longer at that specific venue, like it feels longer.
Yeah, like one of the things I've ridden in Colorado, and I've done like some of the gnarly techie stuff where it was just like gaga gaga gaga, the whole time. And I mean, granted, I've gotten better since then, but I can imagine like how doing that for like, I don't know, like 10, 15 minutes, for one stage. Like, so with that, like, are the stages, like, is there more stages or less stages?
There's definitely less stages. So, like, Texas Enduros, we've normally got, like 10 to 12 maybe over 1 or 2 days. And these, I think Ironton might have had, I think it was 8. It was 8 or 9, which I guess, to be fair, isn't that far off. But some of the bigger venues, like Big Sky, is the one that was supposed to happen in a week, but it got canceled because of flooding. But some of the stages there, I think, are significantly longer. Like you'll have like a 15-minute stage or something, which will be interesting the first time I hit that, because I don't know if I can go for 15 minutes.
Yeah, but I mean, it's worth the challenge. Like I look forward to doing stuff like that, like to kind of find things that take me out of my comfort zone.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, that's like why I want to probably next year. I plan to do the O-Rock one. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I heard that's like a beast of one. And have you done it?
I did O-Rock last year, and it was flooding while we were racing. I mean, there was creek crossings that were like up to my waist, and for the people listening, I'm like 6'2", so like up to my waist is like 3 feet almost of water, and so you're like going through 3 feet of water. Or then some of the stages were like dry creeks, so the whole creek is like flooding, and so you're literally just like riding through a creek while we're doing it. And at O-Rock, I think, like even the fast guys, there was a stage that was taking them like 10 minutes or so. I mean, it was some serious elevation.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, you can't hold on to the bike anymore.
Just smoked.
Oh, you're so smoked.
And yeah, and that's one of the reasons I want to do it, just to kind of put myself through that. Because I remember one of my first races that I did, other than like the Bandera, I mean, that was open for like a very short time. And it's too bad, because that had a lot of potential to be a really fun, not only place to race, but also a good place to just ride in general. But I did the Camp Eagle one my first time on my Diamondback. And I remember on pre-race, it started raining, and I was nowhere in the shape that I needed to be, nor did I have the skill in hindsight looking back on it.
Sure.
I think my ego kind of, as the old saying goes, made some checks my body couldn't cash or what have you.
Yeah, right.
And that's kind of a reference to like more recent to the new Top Gun movie that came out. But anyways, I was like, all these, demons, if you will, kind of coming into my head, like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like, what are you trying to prove here? Like, there was all these things that kind of just started coming to the forefront, and like, why are you doing this and all this stuff. But at the same time, once I kind of overcame that, and then, did the race on Saturday and like Sunday, I definitely kind of, learned something about myself at the same time, became a better racer. I crashed a shit ton. But, with that, do you ever have like stuff like that happen to you, like when you're racing? Like,
yeah, for sure, man. I think, honestly, that's like one of the coolest things about racing, actually, is like most of the time if you go out on a trail ride, if you start to feel kind of gassed, like you might just stop and drink some water. Whereas like racing, like you might just eat it, and like you're going to get up and just try and get back on the bike and go as fast as you can. And like even at this last BME, I think I had 2 pretty solid crashes. There was one, it was like the gnarliest rock garden of the whole race, and it comes in super steep, but then it flattens out towards the end, but it's still just super chunky. So you want to try and carry speed through it, otherwise you're going to try to be like pedaling through chunk. But the speed that you had to carry to not have to pedal through it was so fast. And then on top of that, there's like 2 flat turns in the rock garden. Mm-hmm. So whatever, I wipe out in the rock garden, and for falling in a big pile of boulders, like I actually escaped relatively unscathed, but I had picked up a pretty good knock on like my hip, my hand, my elbow, fell in a bunch of rocks. So like I wasn't feeling great, but so if I did that on a trail ride, like probably my day would be basically done. Like you're going to limp back to the car, but instead I like get back on my bike as fast as I can, and like you're riding again. And then I had another good one, like over the bars, where I think a ghost just reached out and grabbed my front wheel or something. I still don't know what happened, but one second I'm on the bike and the next second I'm on the ground. And like after all of that on Saturday, like you're feeling super sore Saturday night,
right?
But then like you're racing the next day. Like you paid money to be there because I'm not sponsored, and like you want to race. And so like that's a cool part of racing, I think, is it kind of pushes you further than you would go normally, and like you're kind of fighting through it and finding your own limits.
That's cool. I mean, because that's what's happened to me a lot, right, as well. So I know what you're talking about, like crashing and then getting back up. And I did you play any sports when you were younger?
Yeah, I played soccer back in high school and in college.
You think if you didn't play those, that you wouldn't know how to like kind of persevere and push through?
Yeah, I think definitely like having those experiences, you learn to kind of push through pain like that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people play sports in high school and or college or whatever, and then kind of lose that after. And that's kind of why I like racing a bike still, is you kind of keep that like drive, like goal of something like into your adult life. It's a fun thing to do.
Did you race like have you always ridden mountain bikes? Or I know you used to be BMX, right?
Yeah, so I had probably a mountain bike in quotations there since I was 5 or 6, but they were, I think they were like Trek hardtails, but or specialized hardtails, but pretty low end with like the old shitty forks that basically weren't forks.
Right.
And I've had one of those since I was a little kid because my dad always wanted to do it. But I've only been racing mountain bikes for like 2 or 3 years. But yeah, back in high school I did race BMX bikes as well.
What got you back into like you just decided to start racing again, or did like somebody kind of peer pressure you into it?
I think probably. So my brother's had nice mountain bikes for like the past 5-10 years. So I'd ridden with him just like on loaner bikes for a bit, and like it was always fun. But what really spurred it was actually my dad got a nice like Santa Cruz full suspension bike, and I rode that around a bit in Texas, and I was like, oh, this is so much more fun than anything else.
Because you're not like getting beat to shit,
Yeah, man, a full suspension, like I tell people all the time, a full suspension bike and like the shitty hardtail mountain bikes, they're so not the same. Like hardtails have their place. I like hardtails. They're fun. But it's like a whole different ball game whenever you get on a full suspension bike and like what you can do on it.
Yeah, it definitely absorbs a lot of like it covers a lot of either mistakes or skill.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes it a little bit more fun, like just getting beat to hell.
Yeah, it makes it so much more fun, and like you can do much bigger stuff on it. At least I can.
Right. I still switch back and forth between my hardtail and the full suspension. Like yesterday, we did a local ride, like a social ride downtown.
Oh, sure.
I mean, granted, it was in the street, but I took my hardtail. For a number of reasons. But I still like to take it out on trails, and then it kind of, kind of like back to basics kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And I noticed that definitely when I throw on because I run mag peds now. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you knew that since the last race or not. I don't think I was running them then.
No, I don't think you were.
But that was a whole different thing because I know you ride clipless, and I'm coming from flats, and so flats I got really used to because I just started riding not too long ago. But with that, like the mag peds, even though they're heavier, it's kind of like that good happy medium for me.
Uh-huh.
So the hardest thing I had to get used to with the mag peds was jumping. Because just jumping, maybe it's the same thing with clipless. I don't know. I'm not ready to make that big jump to clipless, but maybe one day. But But I mean, it's a good cross between, and I love how I'm able to kind of just stay on the bike. My pedals are able to stay on the bike.
Yeah, for sure. And like if your foot is your foot is in the right spot and it's not coming off.
Yeah.
And I think there's like Sam Hill is a big name in mountain bike racing who rides flats. But the number of big names in mountain biking who race flats is a very small number. Like
right.
Most of the people in competitive mountain bike racing are clipped into the bike somehow. And I've not ridden the mag peds, but I imagine it to be something like being clipped in, and it's just a whole different ball game. Like where the bike is. Right.
And I've heard some people like that have come from clipless to try to go to the magnets, and it's not a big number, but it's I've heard a few people like, I tried them and I couldn't do it. Yeah. But I heard it's easier to go from flats to the mag peds, or just because there's also there's mag peds, there's Hustle. I think Hustle makes some magnet pads.
Like similar idea.
Yeah, it's like a similar idea. I think they float a little bit more. But yeah, that's just new technology coming into to it. So having said that, I think running those mag pads on my hardtail are definitely like an advantage. I can see where they would benefit that, because I remember last year I did the Flat Rock race on my hardtail, And man, I was losing my feet like through all the chunk. I
no
couldn't go as far.
doubt.
Every time I tried to pedal, it's like ta da ta da. My feet were coming off. It was so damn scary. And it was. Did you do that race last year when it was kind of raining?
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
misty and just nasty.
Yeah. But so I guess is there any like I was gonna ask the question, but so you brought up sponsorship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you try to actively seek sponsorship, or do you just kind of go by the if I'm good enough, they'll contact me?
I guess you could say I've sort of started to seek it, and so like part of that comes with like the Crossroad Bikes race team that we're kind of in the works, just really getting our feet off the ground right now.
Right.
And so I've talked to Sean over there about it a little bit, and like I'm not under the illusion that I'm fast enough for anyone to ever give me a free bike or anything.
Right.
Although if there's anyone listening that wants to, like I'm
Yeah.
totally for it. But I've started, and like we have an Instagram account now for the Crossroad Bikes race team specifically.
I saw that. Like, did you who?
I created that one.
I was wondering. I was like, who's managing? Like, is this like a spam account? Like, what is this?
No, so I talked to Sean about that because like I wanted to get his permission before I just went and started it, but
Yeah.
he was cool with it because like what a lot of brands nowadays are looking for like that social media aspect, and so I think if we can hopefully get a decent following on that, some of the companies out there, like even whenever they've got their sponsorship pages where you can submit like a request basically, and so it's not going to be like maybe you can get some free gloves or something, but it's not going to be they're just handing out a bunch of free stuff, but like even if it's like 30 or 50% off of something that you're already going to buy, if you want to call that a sponsorship or whatever.
Yeah.
And so like one company that I had reached out to recently was Push, the suspension company.
Oh, nice.
And they said that they'll give anyone on the team 30% off of their suspension, I think, for the team riders. So call that a sponsorship, and hopefully, well, I don't know if they'll listen to this, but hopefully I wasn't not supposed to share that or anything.
Oh, no, yeah. I mean, well, it's not like you're giving out the discount code or whatever.
Yeah, right.
'Cause that's usually where they would probably like have some qualms with it. Well, that's good to know.
But yeah, so like that's something that I've ridden the Push suspension stuff before, and it's really great. So if it's something that I already would want to get and I get a discount on it, then that is something that I'm sort of in the process of getting set up, not just for me, but for the whole team. I think that would be a really cool perk to being on the team.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I found kind of funny, like not like haha funny, but like interesting in the like asking for stuff, you know. It's strange, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like to
definitely.
be like, hey man, you know, like because that's how I feel like I'm coming off like, hey man, can you get some free stuff? But that's not what like I'm obviously gonna work for it, you know. I'm gonna put in the work to be, you know, competitive. But at the same time, it's just yeah, it's challenging because I do the same thing. I manage the TDTP racing, so I race for Crossroads, and I also, you know, TDTP. I don't know why I'm telling you, like you don't know that, but and that's one of the things I'm kind of, you know, overcoming is the idea of like sending out, you know, people emails and stuff like how to ask the right questions or do you build the relationships and things like that.
Yeah, right.
So, is that something you've had experience with before, like in any other sports?
I don't think I've really done that in other sports that I've done, but really that's because, like in soccer, we weren't doing that. And then the other sport that I've done a bit of is rock climbing, and rock climbing is like most rock climbers want to be described as a dirtbag, like not super sponsored athletes or anything. Like most of the dude, I mean,
like minimal.
Yeah, like there's tons of the like rock climbing meccas around the world, like Joshua Tree or Red Rock, or like the really cool places to go rock climbing. There will be dudes there that like all of their possessions could fit into like maybe 2 backpacks or something. And so I guess if a brand came and was like willing to sponsor them, I doubt they would turn it down because then they could use that money to like buy food or something. But like I've seen dudes like there was one guy I remember he had like a box of strawberries and he's like walking around and he's like, hey man, if you let me stay at your campsite, I'll give you some strawberries. So like it's a really, I don't know, it's a whole different culture, and it's not, I don't think it really feels the same as like what mountain biking and what a lot, like, because most mountain bikers want to be sponsored, whereas like that vibe isn't really the same in rock climbing.
Yeah, so you kind of spurred a thought, and I'm trying to Google this real quick. I never do this because I really want to stay engaged in the conversation, but I think it will contribute to what we're talking about. Mountain, was it rock climbing? Right, it's called rock climbing, because that's something I want to get into. Rock climbing documentary. I saw one recently, and it was really good, but it speaks to what you're talking about, where it's like the minimalist like kind of lifestyle. It's just kind of like literally like immersing yourself into nature, right?
Yeah.
And so with that is, I know one you had talked about earlier was the Dawn Wall, but and then there's Free Solo, but there was one that came out recently that it was really good. And I'm not saying those other ones aren't good, but the kid ended up, he was probably like 23, and he ended up, was it on Netflix or was it Amazon? But he ended up dying.
Was it The Alpinist?
The Alpinist, was it The Alpinist?
I don't know. I don't think the climber in The Alpinist is dead. Not that I know of, at least. Was it Brad Gobright, potentially? Was he the climber?
I don't think so. Maybe. But it was a young kid. It was The Alpinist. Was it The Alpinist? Yeah, Marc-Andre Leclerc.
Yeah.
He's French, right?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, so this guy, I saw this one. And if you guys haven't seen it, check out The Alpinist, even if you're not a rock climber. But this one is pretty, I don't know, amazing. Like just how, nobody knew who he really was. He wasn't on social media or anything like that. And he just, it's kind of like the lifestyle you described, right? He's a very, off the grid, if you will, like, and kind of like free spirited. They kind of went from his age when he was younger, and they interviewed his mom, like the type of person he was growing up. Fast forward, like he always kind of spent time in nature, and then he was doing all these like crazy like rock climbs. And I'm probably jacking up some of the terminology, but he was doing some amazing things at such a young age, and with that came like, the other rock climbers talking about, like the amazing things he was doing and doing like these, faces, around the United States, and just like with no rope or anything. Mm-hmm. I don't think he had rope.
Yeah, I know he did some free soloing as well. And I think in the Alpinist, Alex Honnold, the other super famous free soloist, they both, I think they even had, I haven't seen The Alpinist, or I haven't seen it all the way through. I think I started watching it one night and fell asleep. How
dare you?
Yeah, that's actually not like me. So
no, I know. I'm just messing with you, man.
But I think they had sort of like a little friendly competition where Mark, he like climbed, it might have been the Chief. It was one of the routes in Canada. He free soloed it, and he beat Alex Honnold's previous free soloing record. And then Alex Honnold was like, "Oh, he beat it." So then he like showed up and just absolutely smashed Mark's new record with another record.
So so with that, like they ended up, I forgot who was trying to sponsor him. I mean, it was like Netflix. They were like, "We want to shoot a documentary about this guy," and they were trying to follow him. And like with that mindset, like of just wanting to be away from everything, and then like really trying to, he would sleep at the mountain, or prior to, like days or weeks before. Like obviously weather, factors into that, but I guess it was some type of connection that he would just try to find like within nature. And I think we kind of feel that like in riding. I mean, for some of us that are aware of it, when you're just kind of riding, like whether it's like some remote like wilderness, like when I was in Oregon, it was just kind of some of the rides I would go on was by myself. And I didn't know what was out there, I didn't know if a freaking bear was going to come out or whatever, but you kind of connect with it in a different way, and you're kind of a little bit more aware of your surroundings. You're a little bit more heightened, especially if you're not somewhere you're comfortable with. But within that is, he would kind of read the mountain and kind of climb it, kind of like we do like pre-race. We look at the lines or what have you. It's the same thing, but, obviously different technique, different skills, yada, yada. But with that, he kind of just abandoned the crew. Like he didn't tell them where he was at. He just took off, and then they saw like a post on, I don't know, social media. He did it with one of his friends, and they climbed some face, like, I don't know, I'm probably saying this wrong, but somewhere like in Alaska or something. and without them, because he just didn't want the distraction, I guess, of the cameras and all that.
Yeah, I would compare it like in mountain biking. There's like you can be a park rat, and like it does not feel at all like climbing. Like you've got all the amenities right there, and like if you get a flat tire, like I was teasing one of my buddies because he got a flat tire when we were at Angel Fire a couple of weeks ago, and they like drive him down the mountain. Like they send a little goat, or not a goat cart, but like a little golf cart or whatever to come get you, or gator. Whereas like what I think is a lot more similar in mountain biking to climbing would be like what you're talking about in like Oregon or something, when you go on like a more remote trail ride,
right?
And like if you have a flat tire, either you're walking out or like hopefully you have a tube or like you can fix it or something,
right?
And you're like, you feel a lot more out in nature and you're kind of self-sustained and all of that. And like that's typically one of the big things in climbing as well that people are looking for, is like, and they refer to it in multiple other sports as well, but like finding kind of a flow state where like you're just out in nature and like you don't have outside distractions, the rest of the world kind of slips away, and like you're just focused on like solely, like for climbing it's that one particular route or face or whatever you want to call it, that one specific thing. And then same with biking, you're like out on some, which I love doing that as well. I've done that a couple of times with my brother in like Arizona, Colorado, where you just do like a 15-20 mile ride or longer, just like out in the woods basically. You won't see a single other person out there, and like there's something about that that's really cool. And then with climbing specifically, when they come and they're like wanting to kind of monetize it, when I say they, I mean in this case like Netflix or whatever,
right?
Like the climbers want money, because with that they're able to go do more routes and do other things, but like at its heart I think the goal of climbing is not that. Like you don't really want like a bunch of media attention and stuff. And you kind of have a mix of that in biking as well, where like some mountain bikers, that's like what they're into. Like they don't want all of the media attention, and the really fast guys might humor it a little bit just because they need the sponsorships and everything to make it all work. But then there's other guys that like they just fully embrace it, and it's kind of a different mentality.
So it's kind of like some people chase it for the fame, some people chase it for the love of the game, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
So you brought up something that reminded me of a book I read. I don't know if you read this book. It's called The Rise of Superman. Have you read that?
I don't think so, no.
I've been picking up my reading more so lately with this program I'm doing, but that is, and I'm just to show you how dumb I was, and like assuming it was called The Rise of Superman, and I was like, oh, this looks like a cool book. It was my wife's book, and I picked it up. It was like after she was done with it, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna learn about Superman, I guess. But it was just like a play on words, because it's really talking about. It interviews BMX riders, I think skateboarders, rock climbers. It interviews surfers, but they're doing like all pretty much extreme sports, or very like in that are seeking this flow state. It's an amazing book, and the more I ride, because I wasn't aware of that when I played football, and I don't know if you could achieve that. Maybe you could, like when you're in this, that's what they call it, the zone, because you're in that flow state, that zone. And some people get addicted to it because they're always seeking. Some people say it's like they're seeking adrenaline, and maybe that's part of it. But I believe that's what they're. Some people in this book is talking about. They're seeking that flow state, that like where they're like one with whatever line, and it's where. It's that near death decision, life or death decision you have to make. It's like I can't, like, so for rock climbers, I was talking about one rock climber. He was somewhere, nobody around, and he was climbing this face, and he already chose his line. He couldn't go back.
Yeah.
So he had to figure it out, stay there until he found the line. And he said they talk about like this clarity, this sense of clarity that they have to get out of that situation. And that's like the flow state. And the best thing I can think of with riding a bike or mountain biking was like in crashes, you know what I mean? Where you have to like dump the bike. And I've had this happen to me. The more recent one I can think of, when I was in Oregon, we're doing some line called No Joke. And it was like literally like no joke, for like the lines it was very technical, very steep. loose in some areas, and for whatever reason, I went off the bike to the right side, and it was where all the exposure was, and not only that, there was all these like little baby head boulders that I could have, like literally when I dumped the bike, because I had no choice, I was like, I'm going this way, and this is like, I actually got it on video. It's where I kind of made it, but I dumped the bike off to the right, and in my mind, I'm like, I'm about to break my ankle because of I don't know where to put my foot, but somehow, some way, I dumped the bike. I started falling, and then I put my feet where the rocks aren't. So I'm like, they teach you in the tires kind of thing.
Yeah,
I was literally doing that down this mountain, and somehow I kept my balance and I stopped, and I was able to walk back up. And yeah, it was pretty bananas, but it was like everything slowed down, and I was able to kind of dump my. And that's happened to me a few times, and maybe that comes with crashing. You just get better at it. It's just a skill. But yeah, and there's something to that. So I thought about that afterwards, and I was like, man, that's crazy. Like how things just slow down, and you're able to kind of just figure out where to go. Do you have any experiences like that you can?
Yeah. So there's a couple times climbing I've had that, and then probably a few times biking as well. So like one time we were climbing in Yosemite, and so something I should explain before I start the whole story is the type of climbing I do is called lead climbing, specifically trad lead climbing. So trad just is an abbreviation for traditional climbing. And so in traditional climbing, there is nothing on the rock but the rock. So a lot of people will call it like the purest form of climbing, and I won't get into all of that because there's a bunch of opinions on it. But it is a really cool feeling because like you could just literally walk up to any rock, and it's all up to you for like where you're going to place your gear. And so there's a variety of different gear that you can use to protect yourself while you're climbing. But like one of the biggest things is spring-loaded camming devices, which climbers will just call cams. And so basically if you have a crack in the rock, it's a little mechanical device. It's got a spring, and I won't break down the whole engineering aspect of it.
But you could.
I could. I just might bore you and anyone listening. But
so it's cold treated, then heat treated.
But so basically, you choose where you put that, and it's up to you to. And there's different sizes of cams for the different sizes of cracks that you might encounter, and there's good placements and there's bad placements. So it's also called like gear can rip or pull. Or they'll call it zippering when all of your gear pulls. And like normally if you do something like that, the consequences are going to be pretty severe. But so you're just moving up a face of rock, placing gear as you go. But then if the rock becomes what climbers call like slabby, or you could also call it featureless, although those aren't really the same thing. But typically slab just means anything less than vertical. And normally slab routes will be just like an untouched surface of rocks. It'll just, like if you've ever been to Enchanted Rock, it's out in like, I wouldn't call it West Texas, like Texas Hill Country.
Yeah.
It's just like a big granite dome. And so there might be nowhere that you can actually place gear for a significant amount of time. So anyways, we're climbing in Yosemite. I was the leader, which means so everyone that is following you. So you carry the rope up, you place all the gear, and you get to intermediate spots that you would call a belay, and then you belay up your followers. So the followers don't really take much risk unless the leader just builds a really bad anchor. Because if that anchor fails, then you're all falling down.
No pressure.
Yeah. But the leader takes most of the risk because the leader, if you were to say you're just climbing right off the ground, you climb up 10 feet, you place a cam. Then you're going to climb up above that, and your belayer is feeding you rope. So if you get 5 feet above your last piece of protection and you were to fall at that moment, you've got the 5 foot of rope that is out above your piece, and so you're going to swing onto that. So you'll end up falling 10 feet, basically. So you're going to fall double the distance of your last piece of protection. And there's a bunch of variables there, so it may not be exactly double because, your follower or your belayer rather, can let out a little rope, which sometimes is a good thing. There's tons of intricacies to it, which I won't get into, but a good approximation is about double how high you are above your last piece of protection. And so anyways, we're climbing in Yosemite in like the high alpine area, which is not like the Yosemite that you've seen photos of, probably, because the very popular one is the Valley, which also has crazy good climbing, but there's also, it's called Tuolumne Meadows. And it's, I don't know, like 8,000 feet elevation or something. It's much higher, so it's much cooler. So in the summer, it's a lot nicer to climb out there. And it's a big granite dome, and there's what's called Tenaya Lake in the background and Tenaya Peak, which is a semi-famous peak. So like it's a really incredible view. So like you definitely get into that flow state where you're just climbing along, and like if you look backwards, you just see this granite dome. Since it's less than vertical, it becomes the horizon. So you see where the granite dome kind of stops, and then behind that is a lake, and then behind that is like a snow-capped peak. It was super mega, but like also there's a road in between what I'm climbing and the lake. So the access is crazy good, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. So like, because most climbers don't like hiking. In climbing, you call hiking approaching. So it's just like the lead up to the climb. Because if you're a climber, you want to climb. You don't want to be hiking.
Got you.
So basically zero approach here, but then as soon as you get like 200 feet up, the road just disappears, and all you see is this awesome like alpine lake, super cool peak. And anyways, so I'm chugging along climbing, and at one point there's just a super long blank section. So I was at least 80 feet, probably 100 feet above my last piece of protection. Mm-hmm. So if I am to fall, I'm going to fall 160 to 200 feet. And it's not just going to be straight fall into the air. You're going to be like kind of rolling down,
right,
since it's less than vertical, which is almost worse. But like I remember at the time, like not even like pausing, because like you're just cruising along, and like to call it life or death is maybe dramatic, because like you might survive the fall, but if you did survive, you definitely would have some broken bones for your efforts. But like I didn't even, like I wasn't scared. Like you're just cruising along, and part of that was because it was an easier route for my skills at the time, at least. But like you just, that's one of the really cool things about climbing is it's almost easier to me, at least, versus biking, to kind of get into that flow state, just because I guess there's a lot more circumstances in climbing where if you were to mess up, it could equal death. So it just like,
there's less equipment between you and nature.
Yeah, and like it wakes you up pretty quick. Like if you're looking, like, and so a couple times, you know, I kind of look down, I'm like, oh, I don't want to fall right here.
Right.
But like you just don't, I don't know, it's a really awesome feeling, I guess. And you know, I'm here today, so I didn't die, and it was awesome.
Or maybe you did, and we're talking and wherever.
Yeah. But so that was a time, and there's other stories as well. But I don't know, that flow state it's pretty awesome when you're there.
Yeah. So like we used to climb when I was in. We used to climb comm towers. I mean, I know it's not the same thing, but I know what you're talking about. Like, you know, with similar equipment. I mean, granted, most of our equipment was more like industrial. Mm-hmm. A lot more heavy, especially when you're carrying up like the ropes to the top, and then you got to use the pulleys to like they bring the tools up. Sometimes you got to take the tool bag up, so you're climbing with the tool bag, and plus the gear, plus your boots and everything else. But I remember like kind of just safetying in, and sometimes we'd have to free climb over like guys and stuff too. But I remember like you would kind of like safety in, and then like your safety would like shift a little bit in the D ring, mm-hmm. and like you're 350, you know, plus feet up in the air, or even 200, 100, you die.
Yeah.
I mean 50, but anyways, and I just remember like feeling like that, like you talking about waking up, you know, it's just like you're like, and you're just like your heart stops and everything, and it scares the shit out of you, man. It's like, I don't know, but yeah, man, it's I do feel that the flow state is real, and that's one of the reasons. Not one of the reasons, but I guess it's one of the reasons that I want to get into rock climbing. Like when I was in Oregon, there was some people there from Washington and some Oregon as well, and they were rock climbers. They went to a rock gym. That was my first time ever to a rock gym, and I kind of wish I would have like tried to do it just because I enjoyed, you know, just kind of like trying to scale stuff. You know, again, doing things out of my comfort zone. heights aren't really an issue for me because I got used to it being in.
Yeah.
And then plus being in aircraft or whatever else. And granted I wasn't like fucking skydiving or nothing or jumping out of planes or nothing, but still you kind of get used to heights. Having said all that, I mean, I want to try to get into that. I know that's a whole another like rabbit hole of gear and stuff you got to buy, and then obviously you got to find places, the community. But it seems like it would be rewarding in many different ways. I would imagine it's a lot of the same like-minded people that we're finding like in mountain biking. Like, is the culture kind of the same?
Yeah.
Or
Normally, what I tell people actually is I think I almost prefer the climate. Like, there's going to be a lot more weirdos in climbing, in my experience at least. Like, there's just some odd.
You're doing crazy shit,
Yeah, and like they're literally just like living out of their car if they have a car. So like, it definitely selects for like more different people, but like they're all super friendly. Like, they're all so cool, and like they'll loan gear to each other and just like. Whereas in biking, where you've got like there's for sure cool people in mountain biking. But then also sometimes you get the dudes that have got like a $12,000 crazy awesome bike, which not saying that mine isn't crazy awesome, but like the people that have $12,000 or whatever it is to spend on a bike might also be kind of like douchebags. Not all of them. Like, there's tons of good ones, so don't get me wrong. But like, whereas in rock climbing, to get started, you maybe need $200-$300 or something. So it doesn't really select for like the super elite people as much.
Got you.
Which I would argue that maybe those guys aren't even like real mountain bikers. Like, I don't like to associate with those kind of guys. But I've definitely met guys like that aren't super cool.
I've had some people tell me that because I mean I ride a pivot, right? And I've had a few people tell me, not a lot of people, but I wonder like if that, like riding that type of bike, like kind of makes people assume that about me, that I am, because I've had a few people who be like, hey man, you're ready to pivot, but you're cool. I'm like, the fuck is that supposed to mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm so new to it. I'm so new to the sport, and like, all the different, what's the word? Like the different, categories that people fall in, just being in the sport a long time, but I don't know.
Yeah. Like, I've heard the same thing because I've got a Yeti, which is also like one of those brands. I think they call Yetis dentist bikes, is like the classic joke for Yetis. And so you get that all the time, or like people just assume that you're going to be like some rich asshole, which generally has not been my experience with most guys, including the guys on these nice bikes. But then every now and then you do meet them. Whereas like in comparison, rock climbing, I don't know that I ever met anyone that like I thought was a douchebag. I definitely met people that were like odd. But like, I don't know, it just kind of selects for different people just because of the money part of it.
And that kind of makes sense, not the douchebag part, but the odd part of it, because I mean, they would probably be odd to us, especially like if they're not used to engaging with the public so much. You know what I mean? Definitely. So they're kind of just not used to engaging in conversation and like all the, latest trends or what have you.
Yeah. Like one of my favorite climbers, actually, professional climbers, if you could call him. I mean, he was a professional climber for sure. No disrespect to him, but he actually passed away 2 years ago, maybe. His name was Brad Gobright. But like, you looked at him, and first of all, he doesn't even look like a professional athlete. Nothing against the guy, but like, he's just like a pretty average looking dude. But like, he just absolutely crushes. Like, he was such a good climber, and like, he was just a super dork at the same time. And it was like, and there's guys in mountain biking like that as well, but it was just super cool to see someone at that high of a level. But like, if I actually never even got the opportunity to meet him, but I imagine meeting him, like, he wouldn't even pretend like I was different, even though he's climbing 4 times as hard as me or whatever, just so much better, like at a whole nother level, but he's just so down to earth and like a really cool guy.
And that makes sense too, because I kind of hear that a lot. Not that I know a lot of professional riders or fighters or anything like that, but kind of going back to your point of like a lot of special forces guys, they're not the biggest people. There are some that are fucking like beasts and stuff, but they're unassuming. You know what I mean? Like rangers and stuff
Yeah.
like that. They just look like average guys. Like if you see them in street clothes or whatever, they might carry themselves differently, but you just wouldn't think. You know. But with that, I've also kind of heard that about like professional fighters or anybody that does anything that they're really good at. I mean, aside from like the small select few, like not to knock Lance Armstrong, I'm not sure what he was going through, but I heard he was an asshole. Like for most of for a good deal of the time, he's probably a different person now.
Yeah.
But I mean, so there's that balance, right? It's kind of we talked about earlier. There's some people chase the fame and the glory, and other people just kind of do like for the love of the game. But but I feel that like a sport like mountain climbing or rock climbing or even like mountain biking, you've been humbled enough, or if you're a fighter, you got your ass kicked enough where you're like, you know what I mean? Like you it humbles you and it keeps you down to earth
and like a cool thing I think about both rock climbing and mountain biking is like even at the highest level, like Alex Honnold is probably a good example of like one of the most well-paid rock climbers. And I think he was quoted once saying that he's paid at like the level of a well-paid dentist or something.
Mm-hmm.
When you compare that to like some of the guys in the NFL that are making stupid amounts of money. So
Mm-hmm.
like you can't really be a dick if you're a rock climber because you're not that rich and famous or anything. Like your relative level of like fame and riches to like the top level NFL athletes or MLB guys, you don't even hold a candle to them. So, like, they tend to be, I think, a lot more down to earth and, like, just seem more like real people. And not to knock the NFL guys, like, actually, so I graduated Texas A&M, and one of the guys that was a college player there and now he's in the NFL, I think he's at the Browns still these days, was Myles Garrett, the defensive end.
Oh, nice.
And, like, it was kind of a weird circumstance, but he was a friend of a friend. So, like, we played in, like, dodgeball tournaments and stuff together, like me and this NFL athlete. The dude was massive. He had like pythons
knocking people out with the dodgeball.
It was kind of funny, like not to knock him, but like at dodgeball, it wasn't that he was bad at dodgeball, but like all of the guys on the other team wanted to be able to say, "Oh, I got Myles Garrett out in a game of dodgeball." So like the game starts and there's literally just like 8 dodgeballs all going for him. It made it a lot easier for me because like no one's gunning for you until Myles is out. But anyway, like Myles Garrett is like one of the most down to earth people I've ever met. Like one time I was with him and he was like wearing athletic shorts with like a Jurassic Park t-shirt like tucked into it and then socks and sandals, just like a complete goober. Or we like go to Torchy's and we're like getting tacos, not just me and him. I'm not that close with him. I got you. While we're there, he's like, "Hey, let's play Heads Up." You know the Heads Up game, like on your phone, where it's like charades, basically. So we're just sitting there in the middle of Torchy's playing Heads Up with Myles Garrett, which was a very bizarre experience for me. But like to him, it was totally normal, and he's just like a very normal guy. Like if anything, I would call him like a dork. Mm-hmm. But then like you see him on the football field, and he's like a freaking lethal weapon. Like the dude's a monster.
Yeah, I used to work for it was a couple summers, or I think one summer. I know at least for one summer. I want to say it was a couple summers. But the Houston Oilers used to be here in San Antonio. Yeah. I mean, granted, I'm dating myself. It was a while back, probably like in 96, 95, around there, give or take. Somebody can Google it and be like, he was fucking lying. It was 94, whatever. But it was around that time. I was like a freshman or sophomore in high school, and then some guys that I knew that I went to school with, they had jobs there because they knew somebody. Those kind of jobs are kind of like, who you know what I mean? So I got asked to work with them by my buddy Mikey, and I wanted to go work with him, and I was an equipment assistant, pretty much a fucking ball boy, but that gave me an experience of being around NFL athletes, and I know what you mean. Like there was people like Eddie George that was like humble as shit, fucking beast, strong, fucking throwing up like 4 plates for like warming up. And then there was people like Chris Chandler, who was an older quarterback, but he was just cocky, and maybe quarterbacks have to be that way. I'm not sure. I don't know all of them, so I can't speak to all of their characters, but he was like, just very arrogant, It was kind of like, I saw him like as a dick, but in hindsight, maybe it's just he had to keep that edge, so maybe people can listen to him or whatever. I'm not really sure what the dynamics were with him, but I saw those two, and then there was the veterans. There was like Mel Gray, which was a kick returner, and he was kind of like later in his career. Super chill. Chris Dishman, you know, he got me in trouble because we were at UTEP when they were playing the Dallas Cowboys, which was my favorite team at the time, and he was like, "Hey man," like, he gave me some money. He was like, "Go get some hot dogs and meet me back in the locker room." He was already done playing, and I'm fucking, I don't know, 16, 17. I'm like, well, he's, you know, I guess he's my boss. I'm not really sure. So I want to go get the hot dogs. Meanwhile, like, my boss comes, like, we're chilling in the locker room, and we're just eating hot dogs. And my his name was Haas. I don't know, that was his name. That's what we called him. And he was like, "What the fuck you doing here, man? Get back to work." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry," And he's like, "Oh, leave him alone." And then after that, it was the quarterback at the time was shit. He was a good dude, man. He actually died. I think he got shot by his wife. Steve McNair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but he was super chill, humble. I wasn't there at the event, but they said that, like, they took the rookies to some farm somewhere in Texas or somewhere, and they would make them chase like pigs, so everybody can get a laugh. They would, I guess, grease them up and then have them chase, but everybody would go try to catch him, and he would just stood there and it was just like watching people run after him, and then he just kind of walked up to one and picked it up and then gave it to him. But his background, he grew up on a farm in I think Alabama, somewhere. So anyways, but yeah, I know what you mean. There's like those different levels, right?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Yeah, so some people kind of have to carry that arrogance for whatever reason, and some people are able to kind of put that aside and just be humble. That's pretty wild. So look at that, Miles Garrett. We're not trying to name drop here, but have a little bit of experience. That's pretty crazy. So rock climbing. Anything else that you do? Space at all? I know we had talked about this in the car. So we're driving to Spider Mountain, and I was riding with y'all. Or
yeah, it was that was you, me, and Sam. I think that weekend.
Sam. I stayed with Sam on the way back from Oregon.
Oh, really?
In Albuquerque.
Yeah, I think is he on the East Coast now or something? I think because he was doing like the travel nurse gig.
Yeah, man, that's pretty legit, man. But yeah, I don't know. I know that he was in Arizona or Utah or somewhere.
Was he?
Yeah, because I just saw the pictures and I saw the Red Rocks and stuff.
Yeah, I see him all over the place. Honestly,
yeah,
I forget where he is, but. Shout out Sam, he's a cool dude.
Yeah, man. We had him and Jerry on the podcast last season. Yeah, man.
I remember y'all talking about that. Actually, I think y'all talked about that in the car ride to Spider.
And that's kind of what spawned this,
Yeah,
like you're
that's
here
right.
now. Yeah, so we kind of got off on some tangents. I like to kind of go down rabbit holes and just kind of see where people are at and just kind of discuss different ideas. And one of the things we were talking about is like, so his background is you went to school for engineering, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I was
mechanical engineer.
Mechanical engineer from Texas A&M.
Yeah. And one of the subjects that we kind of got off on tangent on was like deep space travel.
Yeah. So we can talk about that a little bit. So I've done, this was before so now I work at a company called Southwest Research, and I work in the space science division there. And so we're like doing satellites and stuff, or we're doing electronic boxes and instruments on satellites. And I guess we've done a couple like full on satellites. But mostly it's like a piece of the puzzle for a satellite or a lunar lander, which is, I'm working on something right now that's going to the moon.
That's pretty wild. Man, that's pretty cool.
I'm pretty stoked about that one, and I probably shouldn't share this one on the podcast, but I will because I don't think anyone who would care will hear it.
Yeah.
But
you sure?
No, it's not that big of a deal because it's basically,
as long as you don't get into some of the capabilities that you're not supposed to talk about.
No, even that I think I can talk about. But no, what I am excited about right now is, so on all of our equipment, normally there will be a label basically just saying what it is, which is kind of ironic because most likely no one's ever going to read it except maybe in like 100 years if the moon has like a full base and they're looking at our old projects that got sent up there. But so I'm in charge of the electronics box for it, which is basically just a little computer, and like your laptop is way more capable, but anytime you send stuff into space, there's so many challenges to get it to survive. So you have like the thermal environment that you've got to worry about. So like if you're looking into deep space, it'll be don't quote me on these temperatures, but it's somewhere in the realm of like negative 200 degrees Celsius or something. So, super cold. Or if the sun is hitting you, it'll be like 200 degrees Celsius.
So almost like sub-zero temperatures. Or like,
yeah, we're like well past zero, like approaching. I want to say some of like out
absolute zero is what I meant to say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, out in deep space, some of it I want to say is almost at absolute zero. I don't know that any of it is, but yeah, it gets super duper cold and then super duper hot also whenever the sun is hitting you. And so because of that, it's really hard to get, because electronics want to operate at like 70 degrees Fahrenheit, like right at room temperature. Mm-hmm. If they get too hot, they're unhappy. If they get too cold, they're unhappy. And so because of that, like it's pretty hard to get advanced electronics into space. But so anyways, our little e-box has a label on it, and the label is just a little piece of like thin sheet metal basically that is like laser engraved with the label. And then on the back side, there's just like double-sided sticky tape that holds it onto the box. But what we did for the project, all of the guys that worked on it, we all signed that backside, and then that gets covered up with double-sided sticky tape. So it's not actually visible, but like my name will be on the moon. Someone would just have to like peel the sticker off and look at the backside. But
who's responsible for this? Let's go find them.
Yeah. But so like I'm pretty excited. No, you're good. I'm pretty excited about that. I think it's kind of nerdy, but
that's great. Cool. No, that is cool, man. I mean, I know people in the military are like, munitions loaders and stuff like that. They'll like write their names on the weapon before they drop it or whatever.
Exactly,
but,
something sort of like that.
Yeah, so it's kind of the same thing. So that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah. But so going back to the like real deep space topic that we were kind of talking about earlier. So back in college, I did like a research project on kind of some of the challenges and the different things that you would have to sort out to do like deep space travel. And so like the first problem, if we're talking like true deep space, which we're going to assume means outside of our solar system. So then, I mean, you could go to just like a random rock out in the middle of nowhere in space. But like ideally you're going to another solar system, which I want to say it's 40 light years away.
Is that interstellar, or is that considered interstellar travel?
I don't know if they call it. Honestly, I don't know where the word interstellar comes from. I don't know the definition of that word either.
Because I thought it meant like
I guess
different,
just like different stars.
Yeah.
So I suppose you'd call that like interstellar travel, sure. And the 40 light years number could be wrong. I thought it started with a 4, so it's either 4 light years, which I think is not correct, 40 or 400. But whatever the case.
It's a long ways away.
Yeah, so if you don't already know, a light year always sounds like a unit of time, but it's actually a unit of distance, and it is the distance that light travels in a year. And I should know the number for that. Just know that it is a very long distance.
I just know how fast it travels. It's 186,000 meters per second.
That sounds correct.
And then in water, it's like 146.
Yeah, it does. So it changes. Like the speed of light is different in different mediums. So like you talked about water. That's one that's pretty well known. Or then like even going through air versus going through space is going to be different because space is a vacuum. So there's absolutely nothing in space. So it'll go faster through space than it does on Earth. So when they talk about the speed of light, I think. I can't remember if that's through air or if that's through a vacuum, actually, is the speed, like what a light year is. But either way, it's like many millions, maybe, I think it's more than millions.
Either way, it's quite a bit.
Yeah, like insane distance. And so the important part to know is we cannot travel at the speed of light. So like if you could travel at the speed of light and it's 40 light years away, that means it takes you 40 years. So if your astronaut is like, I mean, most astronauts are like 30 to 50 maybe. So say you've got a super young astronaut, you've got a 30-year-old astronaut, which the amount of training that you have to go through and the amount of experience that you have to have before you can become an astronaut, typically they're like Air Force pilots that sort of turn into astronauts. Like to get that prior to 30 is basically impossible. So say you're loading up a bunch of 30-year-olds and somehow you have something that can travel at the speed of light. That means they're 70 years old whenever they show up, unless you figure out some, Star Trek type like hibernation machine or something, which we don't really have a real good way to do that.
But wouldn't they be 70 years old relative to Earth?
Yes, but like they'll still be aging the whole time. So that is a whole nother tangent. So like gravity does affect time, and so they've run experiments with atomic clocks, which a true atomic clock uses like the decaying rate of whatever atom you've got. So they're super precise. But if there's an experiment that they did where they put an atomic clock at sea level and then another one on like a 14er in Colorado or something, like a big tall mountain. And so gravity actually slows down time, which is a very hard thing for my brain to wrap around. But so basically, if you lived at elevation and you had an identical twin that lived at sea level, you living at elevation should technically
age slower.
Is that right? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because gravity makes you age quicker just because of the forces put upon you.
Exactly. Wait, no, that's wrong, isn't it?
Is it?
We got it backwards. Because so like the Matthew McConaughey movie Interstellar. If you remember, they were right in that movie when he goes to the planet with the super high gravity and they're like struggling to walk, and then he gets back and they had their homie in the shuttle like orbiting the planet, and their homie has aged like 25 years, and it was like 7 minutes for them on the planet.
So gravity, you would age.
You will,
slower.
You'll age slower, yeah.
Huh, man, I think I had that backwards in for a long time.
And I know they got it right in Interstellar.
That's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it's a good movie. And they actually, at least in that, it's all sci-fi, right? So there's plenty that was not realistic there. But like they did a decent job with some of that stuff.
Yeah, I saw Neil deGrasse Tyson. He kind of did his, take on, he kind of does that with movies. He'll say what was wrong about it, but they got a lot of stuff right in that movie.
Yeah,
according to him. And granted, I'm not an astrophysicist, so I couldn't argue with him if I wanted to.
Neither am I. But they had some of the stuff in there. They actually, and this is all just like their conjecture because it totally matters what the gravity is. So to say that, he's going to age 30 years because the gravity is this, like they could have been wrong with that aspect or like getting the number exactly right, but at least with the concept they were correct with a few things in that movie. And so if you assuming you don't have a wormhole like they had in Interstellar to travel, and that's all just totally theoretical whether that would work or not, like we have no real proof that.
Right.
We know wormholes exist, but nobody knows exactly what they do. Right. So
it's kind of like
they took some poetic license in Interstellar and just assumed that it just transported you somewhere else.
It's kind of like black holes too. I mean, we assume. I mean,
so
that it's going to rip you apart. Because of the amount of gravity which is just pointing stuff. But we don't really know. Yeah,
exactly. The black hole is another good example of something that it's just all theoretical, and you can't even see a black hole really in space. What you see is the absence of everything else, right? Because a black hole, the reason they're black holes is because even light cannot escape the gravity. So everything's just pulled into it and never escapes.
That's pretty wild about Interstellar because it takes place on Earth. Or I assume it's Earth. I mean, it seems like it. But, where they're like, it takes place in the future of Earth. For those of you that haven't seen it, and if you haven't seen it and you want to see it, then spoiler alert. But it's a good movie, and it's crazy because it plays with the idea of like a high probability of if you were to put our current climate on a certain timeline, and we can argue back and forth whether we're impacting it or not. But I mean, if crops were to and that's what I kind of think about, like when I see all of space being privatized. It's like, why all of a sudden are we kind of just turning this over to private organizations such as Tesla, Virgin Mobile, and so forth and so on. Right. It's just like there's this new space race. You know what I mean? And with that is kind of it just kind of like what else is going on? You know what I mean? We kind of just were to throw up all the current events on a wall right now, and it's kind of like, there's a lot of stuff, and it seems like to be spiraling like getting like crazier and crazier, and it's just like, what the hell is really going on?
Yeah, man, it's crazy. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's a whole different like wormhole we could, or tangent we could go off on, but it just Interstellar. That's what I think about. Is like, all right, what would we do if that happened? Like, what would we do if that was the case? I mean, I hope there's people somewhere in some private place trying to work on like that problem. If that is the case, I'm sure there are somewhere.
Yeah, speaking of like climate change, so I just came back from Flagstaff, Arizona, because my brother was getting married.
Mm-hmm.
But the day that we were leaving, a huge forest fire just erupted, and like within 2 days, I think it was already at like 25,000 acres or something.
Wow.
And just you're seeing plume of smoke, and then you've got people that are arguing that we're not changing the environment, and I'm pretty much on the other side of that. Like, I'm fairly convinced that we're doing something that is not.
Maybe it's not to the level that some people are blowing it up to be, but we can't. Anything in this world, we can't say that we don't have an influence on it one way or negatively.
No doubt. And like the problem is too, there's a bunch of different conflicting studies and yada yada yada. You can go way into the weeds there, but one that I heard recently was something to the effect of, if we were to basically stop producing like greenhouse gases, like a full stop, power plants all basically just shut down and we all become like cave people, over the next 20 years, what we have already done would still cause like a 2-degree increase in temperature on average over the globe. And like people hear 2 degrees and they're like, oh, that's nothing. But like some of the ecosystems on Earth are so fragile that like 2 degrees is like almost a world-ending event. Which I'm not saying the world's going to end in 20 years.
Right.
I hope it doesn't.
You heard it here first.
But,
I'm just joking.
But like, just it's crazy to think about. Like, I even read a book one time that in the book, a meteor, asteroid, there's different classifications for different rocks based on if they're in the atmosphere, outside of the atmosphere, in orbit or not. So I could be saying the wrong one. Meteor, comet, a big rock hit the moon in this book. And so it just pushed the moon just a little bit closer to Earth. Mm-hmm. And so then it messed up the tides. So like all of the coastal cities are flooding, and its gravity was like pulling more magma out of the Earth. So like all of the volcanoes around the world were erupting.
Wow.
And caused like this huge cloud of ash to like blot the Earth from the sun, basically. So it threw the whole Earth into like a little mini ice age. So just everything was way colder. Mm-hmm. And so then all the crops weren't growing, all the bees died, and if all the bees died, then
pollination.
Like they don't pollinate all of these things. And so like it was kind of a scary book to read because our whole world relies on things that are in like such a small balance. There's not like a huge margin. So like a 2-degree temperature change, if it is to happen, could be very bad.
I mean, so I've heard like different back and forth things about that. Like we go back to the last mini ice age. What was it, like in the 1800s or something? Like during the Younger Dryas, and maybe the Younger Dryas was further back. But like it was kind of like where the Black Plague like happened is because like the temperature dropped, and then like crops are like were dying because you couldn't grow, and then it activated something in the fleas, and the fleas like bit the rats, and the rats bit humans, and that's what's kind of started the Black Plague. But it was just like this drop in temperature for an extended period of time that kind of, so it's kind of the same thing, but in the sense of like just a different set of circumstances. And then on the other side of that, I've heard about the 2-degree difference where this planet used to be like a much hotter planet, and then with that there was like everything grew more dense. I mean, I think the ecosystems might have changed, like because right now it's happening I'm trying to think of the one by Australia.
New Zealand?
No,
the Great Barrier Reef.
Great Barrier Reef, it's bleaching because of the sun. It's getting hot. The ecosystems are dying on there. Mm-hmm. Indonesia, same thing. Do you ever like track like space weather?
So there's like some things with space that I guess you would call it weather. So like one big thing is like solar flares. So
that's where I was going with it.
Yeah, like with like people have talked about Mars. There's The Martian. There's a bunch of movies about going to Mars because of all of the planets in our solar system. Besides Earth, Mars is like the most inhabitable, and I think there's evidence of life on Mars. There's a bunch of stuff that quotes that, but you can't believe it all. But on Mars, it has a much thinner atmosphere. So if you were to live on Mars, you would have to live like in a cave or something. Otherwise, solar flares would give you lethal amounts of radiation, which is actually something that we work with my work. Like my little electronics box, radiation will also kill electronics. So there's like a minimum wall thickness for your electronics box because otherwise the radiation is going to destroy the electronics basically.
What do you put, like a Faraday cage around it or something?
So it's basic, like a Faraday cage, what you've seen probably is just like, it looks like chicken wire or something basically, right? But a Faraday cage just means a conductive cage. So our box is typically aluminum. Sometimes it'll be like titanium or magnesium is another one that we'll use. The norm is aluminum because it's relatively cheap versus like machining magnesium or titanium gets pretty rough. And then with satellites, there's actually a maximum amount of titanium that you can put on your satellite before it becomes a problem because titanium doesn't burn up when it comes back into our atmosphere. So if your satellite falls out of orbit and burns up,
somebody in the head.
Yeah, you just created a meteor basically. So that's why we like to use aluminum normally. But so aluminum, since it's conductive, will act as a Faraday cage. So you just have to have all of the electronics inside of a little protective box, basically. And then, so like it's going into space, which is a vacuum, but you can't trap air inside of your box. So you have to have little vent holes to let the air out as it goes into the vacuum, right? And it's not that complex, but there's math behind how much vent surface area you need to have per the size of your box. And even those little vent holes, it'll be like a hole coming in this way and then another hole coming in this way, and they intersect because the radiation can't make a 90-degree turn. So it'll hit that box and like attenuate and like dissipate basically.
Right.
But like you won't see like just a hole straight through it because then the radiation could come through and that could actually
just fry everything.
Yeah, that could fry your, in some cases, like $200,000 to $500,000.
It's kind of like what happened with the Carrington event.
The what now?
The Carrington event.
I don't think I know.
That's kind of like one of the last solar flare was like I forgot what because they put everything on a rating scale, but it was like I don't know, like a H10 or 15, but it's kind of coincides with every so often like the Earth's magnetic poles like flip. Yeah. So when that happens, our atmosphere is the protection of our Earth. Which the northern lights and stuff, that's usually like solar flares.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So with all that, when the magnetic poles flip while it's doing that, until they set back in their place, it takes away. The theory is it takes away our protection. Maybe you can speak to it. Takes away our protection from solar flares. So when that's low, we have a more likelihood of solar flares actually affecting our electronics here on Earth.
Well, and besides electronics, like if we were to not have an atmosphere, that also means we're going to be getting like lethal doses of radiation.
Right.
Yeah, so I have heard about the poles flipping thing, and I don't think it has happened in at least recorded human history. And so there's some debate, I think, on how it happens, like, because, there's a couple of different ways that it could, you might just, one day it's north-south, and then the next day it just flips, like it could be like a real quick thing. Or potentially it's like...
But that'd be like catastrophic, wouldn't it, if it happened that quick?
That would actually be better. It might dork up a bunch of electronics and stuff, but then at least we have like the magnetic poles the entire time. Whereas if instead it like kind of slowly fades and then kind of flips or whatever and like slowly builds back up.
Right.
Well, that would mean in the middle there's potentially an extended period of time where we don't have our magnetic field. And so then all of the solar flares would be giving everyone lethal doses of radiation unless you're to like hide underground in a bunker, basically.
Right.
So that is another thing to help you sleep at night in a way that the world could end.
Yeah, and I'm not, I know. I mean, there's so many different things. I mean, and not to mention we're on a planet like spinning like just into infinity.
Yeah.
But with that, like I know like there's a guy I was following on YouTube for a while, but I had to stop following it because it was just like too overwhelming as far as like the amount of information. But he tracks space weather, whether or not he's licensed or certified to do so. But he pulls a lot of his data from NASA, and like they've been tracking the magnetic poles. Like they started moving like in the I'm probably fucking up this year, but like 1930s around there, and maybe a little bit later than that. And they've been moving the last 30 or 40 years. They like started moving quicker. I can send you a link, but they started moving quicker, and they're like in different spots, and so that's why there's like a big like, at least with him, according to him, and some I don't even know what the right profession is, astrophysicists or people that track space weather. A concern for solar flares more likely now because of that, which makes sense why you put like a lot of server farms and stuff underground and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
But I mean, like I said, I'm not an expert in it. I just kind of track it, and I became aware of that because my last assignment we were having to deal with satellites, so that became a more prevalent, thing, and especially when you're dealing with like HF and how that the ion, if somebody would have detonate like a nuclear bomb and they just started recording right now as soon as I said that, like in the atmosphere that could mess up the ionization of the atmosphere, like affecting communications, yada yada.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then so yeah, I mean, there's like another thing. I don't want to kind of be doom and gloom, but I mean those are realities that could affect our current way of life.
Yeah, I typically try and err on the side of ignorance for all of those things.
Yeah,
because like there's just so much. Like it's all just like such a small balance or like a fine balance,
right?
And like it just takes like one crazy person to like just mess everything up.
Yeah, I know, and I don't even want to get into like I thought about talking about it earlier, but I don't know. Just everything that's kind of going on with the space race and everything that's going on with that. And have you heard about what's going on like with under the Antarctic and stuff like that? With the flags, countries putting flags underneath the ice and stuff to claim their stake.
I haven't heard this. No.
Yeah, there's so obviously like the polar caps are like melting, and we just talked about climate change. But there's like been countries, to include the United States, that have been putting like staking claims on some of the land that's being like melted, uncovered and stuff like that, which is crazy because that's not something I think about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then like you'd figure we learn a lesson from everything that's kind of transpired over the since the past 10, 15,000 years of like wars and stuff like that, but no, we're just still trying to claim land and still trying to be number one and stuff like that. But I just say that because now we're going into space, and it would suck to kind of take that same mentality into space.
Yeah, and there's a Netflix show that kind of does a spin on it because the United States just announced Space Force as like another branch of the military, right? So
which was the Air Force used to be that, but and now they're like split off. But I think the show is called Space Force, and it's got like I seen
Steve
that,
Carell.
With Steve Carell, dude. I saw that. It's pretty good show.
And they're like making like I think in almost every episode, Steve Carell says like "boots on the moon" because they're talking about weaponizing space and stuff, and like. The intent, I think, of the show is like satire. Like, this is not how we want to act. Like, just be civilized people and like let's not turn space into another place to fight.
To kind of take this in a different direction, but have you seen that movie? It just came out recently. It was on Netflix, but it was with regards to a meteor that was about to hit Earth.
Oh, Don't Look Up.
Don't Look Up. And unfortunately, I feel like that's the way things would get handled nowadays.
Yeah, pretty much. And so, like, that one, the director of that, his intention was satire about climate change, actually.
Right.
Because, like, basically, in the movie, they can't even agree that there's, like, it becomes an argument on whether or not there's a meteor.
Right.
And it gets to the point where you can see the meteor, like, and so that's where the title Don't Look Up comes from. So, like, the far right or whatever political party is anti-meteor, their quote literally becomes "Don't look up." Like they can't, and so then you've got like they show like Alabama rednecks or whatever. They're like, "It's my body. You can't tell me to look up. If I don't want to look up, I don't have to." So they can't even agree that the meteor exists, even though it's so obvious that you can see it.
Right.
And so like his intention was like climate change obviously exists, but we can't even agree on that simple point. So how are we ever going to like do anything to try and fix it or slow it down at least if you've got people that like won't even agree that it's real?
Yeah, but that takes place today, and like, no matter what, like there's just people that don't. I mean, you could take that with any type of self awareness or self growth. You know what I mean? Some people aren't willing to look at what they need to fix within their own lives. They kind of just like sweep it away, and pretend like it's not there.
Yeah.
And just hopefully it'll go away, but that's not the reality of it. Meanwhile, shit's on fire and like nobody's like, oh no, it's just perfectly fine or whatever.
Yeah, and like in the movie, it just shows like the two opposing sides, which feels way too real because, not to make things political, but you've got like CNN and Fox that are just like complete opposite ends of the spectrum, and neither one of them is telling the truth. Like that's almost a guarantee, right? Like maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle, but like it's just the stuff that news companies will spout off nowadays is just insane to me. And actually, it's a movie. Oh, Ron Burgundy or Anchorman. If you've seen that one, that's a great one where they're like basically just making fun of what the news has become because it's just it used to be like they actually were telling the truth, and now it's just they'll say whatever they can to get your attention because that turns into dollars for them.
And I think that at one time they used to tell the truth, but I still feel like at one time there was still some type of spin in it in the name of national security. And I think that there are like times for that, but for the most part, like lately, and I think that's just kind of like anything else, right? You started with the good intentions, and then just over time it gets more and more corrupt, and they try to use the same like the story to try to justify the same reason why you're doing something or not doing something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as far as politics go, I mean, like all that stuff is just I don't understand. Like I don't know. The whole two-party political system is fucking stupid.
I agree
because it just puts people against each other. And you know what I mean?
I think it was George Washington, like our original president. He was quoted saying, "We should not have political parties." Like that was one of his last sentiments as president. Is he was very clear because he saw that. Like he was, I guess, ahead of his time. You could say, like he recognized that it is not good. Like to try and divide the country is a bad thing.
Right. And it's just, I mean, people get manipulated into that, and especially people that like. I think that's one thing that's lost now is people like to critical think for themselves. They just kind of accept information for what it is and just kind of just run with it. They don't like ask. And on the other side of that, it's also kind of looked bad upon, like especially more recently. And I don't get Democrat and Republican, like that's all. Like in my opinion, it's kind of like bullshit. It's just like we kind of just highlighted why it's not right, but at the same time, it's like because of that, I don't know, man. I forgot where I was going with that. It's just not good for the country, and that probably doesn't articulate very well. But I think that's where a lot of people are with it now. Is just they just don't want to have to deal with it, so they just try to maybe distract themselves with whatever vice that they have or what have you.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can come away from it and kind of steer this in the right direction because the way it's going is not good, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But so you're going to do the Big Mountain Enduro Series. When's your first race?
So the first one was Ironton that we already did, and then I think I told you already the second one was supposed to be Big Sky, Montana, which I was super stoked about, but they had an what is the word? Escaping me. They had just a bunch of snowfall this year, like not normal levels of snowfall, and so like Yellowstone National Park is closed entirely. I don't know if you saw that in the news.
No.
And then like because they just have massive flooding going on up there, so they had to cancel that race. So the next one will actually be in Purgatory, Colorado, which I've ridden there once or twice before, and it's really good riding. And we'll see how much of it is in the bike park. But like the bike park has an old World Cup downhill track, and it's like old school riding. Like there's just massive hucks, like 8-10 foot drops, just almost to flat, and like just super steep chutes and like off camber trails. And I mean there's some berms and stuff as well, but there's some really cool like kind of old school stuff there. that like takes a lot of technical ability to be able to ride it. So I'm looking forward to that one.
So when you say old school stuff, it's just more like raw, like
well, more
lines,
more raw, and then like nowadays, even at Angel Fire, which I love Angel Fire, don't get me wrong here, but you'll get like just big berms that like you don't even have to touch the brakes. Whereas like the old school stuff, they like didn't really make berms, so it just have like one of my favorite turns on the World Cup track at Purgatory is it's a big sweeping right-hander through the woods though, and it's super tight single track, and so you're turning right, but the whole trail is like sloping to the left, so you're just like fighting to try and keep the bike on line, and then it's just massive steep as well, so you just like fly out of it, and you're just trying to hold your line the whole way, and it's like it's a very different type of riding, and I like doing different types of riding. I love flow as well. Flow trails are great, but also just having like the gnarly stuff or like the off-camber stuff, it's fun to get variety.
Yeah.
I think actually that's one of the cool things about enduro racing, although I always tell people I'm a downhill racer that just happens to live in Texas where we don't have big mountains to do downhill racing.
Got you.
But the cool thing about enduro racing is you have to be like a very well-rounded rider. You got to be able to do it all. You got to be able to pedal, because you might have, especially in Texas, we'll get some of the stages that are just real pedal heavy, but then you'll also get like the steep, rocky, gnarly stuff, and then you also get the flow stuff with jumps and all sorts of things. So for enduro racing specifically, you have to be kind of a jack of all trades and really able to ride all of that. And I think Purgatory does a pretty good job of having a big variety there, which is cool, because then, some of the trail, like one of the races in the Texas series, the Southern Enduro Tour, so it's not even in Texas, the one I'm talking about, but it's up in Arkansas at Hot Springs.
Yeah, and we did that one too.
Yeah, and so I love that trail system. It's fun there, but probably 5 out of the 8 trails that you ride there, whatever, are like flow trails.
Yeah.
So especially for the guys that live there and like they just know those flow trails like the back of their hand, like it's just a massive advantage to them.
Yeah,
and
that's true, because when you have like more of like raw trails with more variety, as you say, like there's the lines change throughout the day.
Yeah, and it tests your ability on all sorts of different types of tracks, and that's, I think, a really cool part of enduro racing to me.
Nice. Well, man, good luck with that. I mean, hopefully I can try to make out some of the big mountain enduro series. That would be cool.
Yeah, you should definitely make it to some.
I'm probably gonna look at the schedule and see what it is, what's out there. I know we're supposed to be doing some other trips this year, so line up with the schedule and see where that goes from there. But if not this year, hopefully next year. Hopefully the damn gas goes down, unless I can get a sponsor from like Exxon or something and get some damn fuel. But yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on. Hopefully you had a good time, man.
Yeah,
and,
that's great.
Yeah, but yeah, for those of you listening, thanks for listening. Look forward to having more guests on, and hopefully Chug will be back once he kind of gets solidified with his chef school and stuff like that. But yeah, more to come. And if you guys have any comments, I just ask you to be respectful in the comments and just try to keep an open mind and critical think and do your research. And appreciate your time.
Awesome.
All right, man. Thanks. If you don't have enough time to sit down and watch the whole video, please check us out on Spotify, Pandora, or any streaming app. Just search Crash and Chug. To stay up on the latest content, please click the subscribe button, the notifications button. Please help me grow this podcast via word of mouth and show that we could grow something without algorithms.